What is truth? That's the question we'll be answering in this video. Hello everyone, this is Dr. Todd, and I've been given some thought. I've been reading in the scriptures, specifically in John 8:32, where Jesus talks about you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. And it's given me the thinking or the thought process of how does Jesus' understanding of truth square with the postmodern idea of truth? You know, when we try to define truth, truth is simply, at least Merriam-Webster says, truth is the property of being in accord with fact or reality. In other words, truth is an expression of simply the way things are. And postmodernism tends to reject that idea because they claim that truth has been used as a weapon wielded by institutions of power to control and oppress others. And so I get that objection. I do understand it. However, the main objection here is really that the person in the postmodern mindset desires to be free. And I guess the question needs to be free from what? It seems like at its very core, postmodernism is an attempt by human beings to be God. You see, from that perspective, since all truth is relative, I get to be the arbiter of truth. That conceptually could work. I guess theoretically it could work as long as you are the only entity in existence. However, you are not. In fact, there are 7.9 billion other entities or individuals who want the exact same thing you do. So, how is it then that 7.9 billion people can be their own little gods and have everything the way they want it and inhabit the same real estate? In other words, what happens when one truth, my truth, bumps up against another truth, your truth? There are just a few options. Your truth extinguishes the other person's truth. The second option would be the other person's truth extinguishes your truth. But see, the problem with those two approaches is that truth becomes the very power game in which one side must triumph over the other, which is exactly what the postmodernist says shouldn't happen. So when you relativize truth, one of the truths has to win and the other needs to be suppressed. So you're really no further along than you were when you were trying to fix the problem with postmodernism in the first place. The third option, I guess, to make things feasible is that all truths could be allowed to kind of coexist beside each other. This peaceful coexistence, as I think about it, may work in theory until you have to put it into practice. What do I mean by that? Well, imagine for a moment you're having chest pains and a family member takes you to the emergency room. They run a series of scans and tests, and the doctor tells you that you have a severe blockage and you need open heart surgery immediately. Well, you don't trust doctors, let's say, and you tell him that you don't believe him. So you decide to go home because his truth is not your truth, and you don't have to listen to his truth. You think you're going to be fine. What do you think is going to happen in that situation? I'll give you another one. What happens if you're a postmodern professor and you agree to teach an extra class, and the university, the dean, tells you that he's going to pay you $5,000 for this course, which is a pretty good sum of money. So you agree to it and you teach the class, and then when your paycheck comes, you only get paid $2,000. What warrant do you have to say that you're owed $5,000? Because all the dean has to say is, That's your interpretation. My truth says I only owe you $2,000. So, you see, you can't live consistently in a postmodern framework. You can live with the tension, but that then requires that you create cognitive distortions in order to keep the fantasy reality that you have created for yourself going. It's kind of like a psychopathological Ponzi scheme. You're having to cover one thing for another, and none of it coheres with reality. I see this. I read a book recently called The Coddling of the American Mind. And in that book, the authors Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff tried to see what was going on in college campuses in the mid-2000 teens. We had riots everywhere and some things that we're still kind of dealing with, if you will. And what they discovered is that through the humanities and different departments in these universities, there was a teaching based on critical theory and some other things, postmodernism, that taught three great misbeliefs. The first was that what doesn't destroy us makes us weaker. The second was always trust your feelings. And the third was the world is full of good and bad people. Well, from a clinical perspective, what has been institutionalized and is being taught as gospel truth, but it's nothing more than stinking thinking is what cognitive therapists call it, is that if what doesn't destroy us makes us weaker is simply the cognitive distortion of jumping to conclusions. Always trust your feelings is nothing more than emotional reasoning. And the world is full of good and bad people is black and white thinking. These three are typical cognitive distortions that any cognitive therapist will help troubled people work through so that they can function well in life. So all of that would not happen or be possible if we did not reject the notion of objective truth. What we need is some sort of transcendent arbiter of truth that can decide what truth is. And we see it very clearly in the Bible. The New Testament specifically teaches it. I said before that John 8:32, Jesus tells us that if we abide in His words, we'll know the truth and the truth will set us free. John 17:17 in His high priestly prayer to God the Father, He says, sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. So we know that God has revealed truth to us. He's also allowed through His common grace, He's allowed us to discover things that cohere with reality. We understand things such as antibiotics and how they work, or vaccines, for a more contemporary example. We understand by observation and truth how those things come about being and how they help people. So if we're going to deal with postmodernism from a Christian perspective, the most important thing we can do is simply insist on a definition of truth that states that truth is a state in which, let me rephrase it. Truth is an expression of the way things really are. In other words, truth corresponds or coheres with reality. Now, that's not well taken in the current climate, but it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, that heart patient can believe whatever truth he wants to believe. But if he goes home and doesn't listen to that doctor, the reality is he will die. And so truth does have consequences because truth expresses reality. So I hope that this has been helpful and given you something to think about. If you have any comments and want to interact with me, please feel free to do so at the bottom here. If you like the work I'm doing, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you have any questions, like I said, let me know. God bless, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.